Why is it so important to deal or manage with our past before we get married? Do you think this is important? Anybody disagrees with me? We'll know that, the answer of that, very soon. We have two objectives today. Number one, to understand how my marriage needs to stay healthy and functional. I mean, these days we hear about marriages that start and end in few years, unfortunately. Very sad. Very sad. Especially among the Western culture, it's much more common. But even with our culture now, in our Coptic culture, unfortunately, we have been seeing increasing numbers of failing marriages in the first few years. So this is one objective, to understand how to keep my marriage healthy and young. To be aware of the past or any past issues that can have a negative impact on my marriage. And then the last one is to learn how to resolve such issues as early as possible. It's very highly recommended that issues of our past, I will repeat that again, issues of our past, serious issues that can impact my future marriage, need to be resolved as soon as possible, as early as possible. If possible, let us resolve those issues before we get married. And I will elaborate about that specific issue in details. Like a year ago, I found this article, very interesting article about, anybody is familiar with Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze? Anybody familiar with that? Who are they? Actors, right. And what is significant about them, to bring it here, let me tell you, are revealing the secret behind their long-lasting marriage. And you know, this is Western culture. What is the long-lasting marriage in their understanding? What do you think? Give me how many years? Huh? Yeah, a little bit more. We'll see. Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze, Jr., are revealing the secrets behind their long-lasting marriage. The couple, who first met while filming the 1997 movie I Know What You Did Last Summer, tied the knot in 2002 and has been married now for 16 years. Wow, 16 years. You know, this is the norm here. If you get married for 16 or 20 years, oh wow, unbelievable. That's why you hear about those frequent marriages, and it's normal to hear, like got married 2, 3, 4, 5 times. But if we go to someone real, that belongs to our, not only the culture, but the real faith, the Orthodox faith that we believe in. I want to go use, how long have you been married? 58. More than a half century. Yeah. And actually, myself, I just celebrated my 50th anniversary of our engagement in November, and we are going to celebrate the wedding anniversary in June. And I think, if you enjoy your marriage, if you rejoice in your marriage, if you live your marriage according to God's meanings or godly meanings, the mentality, the mind of God who created love and sex and marriage and intimacy, you will understand how God has created us to get married and to stay married until the end of our life. So it's very important to understand how marriages fail. You know, we have been talking about that all day long. You heard probably first from Abuna and then Abuna and Dr. Nabil, etc. But let us be more specific. Communicate, Dr. Nabil. That's the key. It's about being present. Okay? Listening is the most important thing. So before we get married, do we understand what marriage is all about? Yes or no? We need to understand. What marriage is not only about love and communication. It's much more than that. And we need to understand what marriage is all about. Marriage is about the two here shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two but one flesh. Matthew 19:6. And God's is the one, is God's power. They are joined through God's power. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. Matthew 19:6. So the challenge here, how can God and I keep this one fleshness, this unity, this union, this tight union between me and my spouse? How can we keep it forever until the end of life? So it says here that a perfect marriage is about just two imperfect people who refuse to give up on each other, only each other. I would rather say much more on themselves. Refuse to give up. I refuse to give up on myself. Because it's not about only giving up on my spouse, but actually, in fact, and that's something in our psychological understanding. If you study psychology, it's about me much, much more than about the other. You know why? Because God has granted me authority and control over my behavior and over my actions. And I can never change the other, but I can change myself to adjust to the other. So successful marriage here, according to that, is about two spouses, one at point A and the other is at point B. And both spouses would walk halfway exactly. If one walks 55% and the other 45%, the first 55%, it looks to be not a big, insignificant. No. You get tired at the end. At one point, you get tired. And that's how marriages fail. When we start to get bombarded with what's called fatigue, marital fatigue. When I start to give up on my spouse or on myself. So, 50 years in the make. I mean, I put that like chronological when I got engaged on November 23, 1969, and then got married on June 11, 1970. And we were so blessed from day one. And that's how I think we need to get such blessings. If you're not blessed with God's blessing, I remember it's not only about me and my wife, it's about the blessings we got from church. I mean, on the day of, or the day before our engagement, we went to get the blessing of Bishop Shenouda, who became Pope Shenouda III later on. The day after our engagement, we went to get the blessings of Pope Kyrillos, His Holiness, Saint Pope Kyrillos. And that's how you start with this blessing, and keep it in mind that this is the blessing from God, not from a man or a human being. And then started to feel all the challenges. Marriage is a journey that you go together, but it's full of challenges, full of surprises. But if you are in love with each other and keep that love warm and active, then your marriage will stay, because God is working in you. But on the other hand, keep your realistic expectations. You will never give up on each other. So, one thing to do here, St. Paul said it in Philippians 3:13. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider that I have made it my own. But one thing I do. What is that one thing, St. Paul? Forgetting what lies behind and reaching out for the things that are ahead. Is it easy? We said that our past is always a challenge for me. How can my past be a challenge for me? Generally speaking, if I am carrying, for example, a burden of guilt, I made mistakes, and that guilt is still staying with me. I probably repented or changed it or anything, but still I can't forgive myself. So self-forgiveness is important. Self-forgiveness, along with God's forgiveness, is all about that. Forget what lies behind. Move on. It's, of course, much easier to say than to do. So, your enemies and friends may be your past, may be your worst enemy. Especially if you have been raised in a family, dysfunctional family, and you carried so much from your early childhood. Or you had problems with your young age, your childhood, your youth, etc. It's about the past shaping up your future, and the work of God. If He is in control, then you are in control. So the key here, the key is spirituality, my faith, the work of God within me to change me, and my awareness of my problems that I need to work on and resolve before I get married. Of course, you know, what is this? This is the brain, of course. The brain actually has 3 centers. You can see this circle. Can you see it? This circle is about the place of what's called the center of emotions, feelings. Feelings. Feelings are there since our birth. What is the first feeling any human being would experience in life? What does a baby, the newly born baby, would do after birth? Not cry. It's scream. Not cry. Actually, scream. You know what's the difference between this and scream? Is about fear, panic. Where am I now? What is this? You know, and that fear follows us until we die. We will carry and live with fear all our life. Fear is about something that will happen to us under some circumstances, like exposure to traumatic experience, as we will see. Fear. So in this center, it's called the amygdala. Any doctors here? Physicians? Yeah. The amygdala, the center of the affect or emotions or feelings. But there is another center in front of that little bit here. It's called the center of memory. Do you know what's its name? It's called hippocampus. Don't remember. Amygdala and hippocampus. The hippocampus is the store, the place where feelings are stored in the memory. That's fine. The problem here, they call it like the limbic system. It starts with the shoulder, that's the feeling. Then the elbow is like the, called the memory. And then the wrist that moves the fingers and the hand. It's located here. It's called the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. The prefrontal cortex is the center of decision making, rational thinking, wisdom, insight, depth. Why sometimes we make wrong decisions? What do you think? Wrong decisions because the prefrontal cortex here doesn't work well. And you know what affects that? What is stored in the memory, the feelings stored in the memory. If I am carrying negative feelings stored in my memory, every time I try to make a decision, my decision may not end up to be a good or positive decision. Or sometimes I hurt myself. That's why people go to therapy sometimes and counseling, because they first complain, I don't know why I end up making wrong decisions. And these wrong decisions are not because I want to make wrong decisions, but because of things that happened to me early in life, negative feelings, whether they are fear, guilt, shame, anger, etc. Those feelings that are stored in the memory will impede and prevent me from making right decisions. That's why we need to move on and see 7 features in healthy marriages now. I need just to compare now. What are the 7 features of healthy marriage? First is mutual selfless love. Mutual, both ways. Selfless, it's not selfish love. Okay, it's very important. Number 2, independence from my own original or nuclear family. It's very important. Unless I detach myself from my original family, I cannot function as a spouse. If I keep my strong, very strong ties, or too strong ties that would prevent or impede me, like becoming barriers between me and my spouse, this is not right. And number 3, healthy bonding in intimacy. We'll talk about that later. And number 4, communication. Commitment and responsibility. And number 5 is communication, mutual understanding. Number 6, openness to unexpected developments. Be ready. Life is not always full of roses, okay? There are some thorns in life. We need to know how to deal with that. And the last one is preparedness for parenting. Keep in mind those 7 things, features. You need to check on your marriage every now and then. about all of that. So how things may go wrong? Major factors before marriages. Number one, childhood factors. And number two would be premarital factors. Childhood and youth, and then things that happen before marriage. I still have 7 childhood factors. What are these 7 factors? Number one, developing my personality trait. Who am I? Do you understand anything about your own personality, yes or no? You need to understand that. Your gender. Your gender. Have you been liked among your parents because you are a boy or a girl? Or you felt like there has been some discrimination because you are a boy or you are a girl? Number 3, ranking among my siblings. Anybody here is a firstborn? Yeah, bravo, congratulations. Firstborns are very, very compassionate. Yeah, full of compassion. But at least, you know, those firstborns sometimes may be a little bit insecure sometimes, you know, can fall victims of kind of jealousy because when they have younger siblings, they start to compare, and Dr. Nabil just spoke about comparing, etc., etc. Anybody is a middle child here? Bravo, good. What is good about the middle child? A good middle child can be actually the black sheep of the family. On the other hand, a middle child can be the greatest blessings of the family. I remember one specific middle child in my life. He was one of my Sunday school students at one point. His name is Abuna Dawood Lamay. And I remember him since 1974, first time. He was like a 12-year-old middle schooler, and he was a middle child. I knew his older brother, Dr. Hani, and his younger brother, Ed. But, I mean, I remember him when he was young. He was extremely shy and very introverted person. However, he struggled, and he speaks about that openly, by the way. He struggled. I used to, when I talk to him and say, "Good morning, Basim. Sabah al-khair, ya Basim." He would blush out of, yeah. But I mean, can you believe that has become Abuna Dawood Lamay, who's doing all this service all over the world? Amazing. This is the blessing of a middle child. What about anybody here is the baby of the family? Good for you too. You get all the spoiling and all the everything, love and care, attention. As long as you can use that the right way, that's fine. Ranking. Communication within your original family. Huh? You were? Good for you. What about communication in your original family? It's very important, listen to that you used in your original family to communicate feelings and emotions much more than facts. This can be a problem. If I was raised in a family, I was never used, I was never trained to communicate feelings and emotions. All what we used to talk about in my original family was just studying, eating, sleeping, taking your meds, washing your teeth, brushing your teeth, etc., etc., etc. No, please, this is something that you need to work on immediately. even before you start, if you get married. Please train yourself while you are still engaged to speak and talk and communicate feelings much more than facts. And feelings is very easy to talk about. Just you can exchange together how you feel. Not necessarily about feeling towards each other, but feeling in general. You need to understand how your spouse feels, period. You need to learn how to read body image, body language, and to understand that. You need to learn how to spot the feeling and to address the feeling immediately. Start that right now, because communication of feeling can avoid you a lot of trouble in your marriage. Sex education experiences, of course, because sex education should start very early during our childhood. And then two major things, number 6 and number 7, trauma. We'll talk about trauma very soon. But bonding with parents. How bonding with parents affect my future marriage? Of course it does. I mean, girls who never bonded with their fathers during the first 12 years of life may find it very challenging to bond with their future husbands. Boys who could never bond well with their mothers during their first 12 years of age may find it very hard to bond with the second mother, the female figure in their life, their future wives. So how can we fix that? It's about, as we mentioned earlier, it's about God, and what was the second word? The A word, awareness. Awareness. I am here to speak to you this evening to raise your awareness about things that you may never have thought about before, or you might never think about in the future. But when you keep that awareness, you will manage to control and take care of that stuff. Emotional dependence also within your original family. It's called emotional or covert incest, like manifestation, unhealthy attachments with parents, lack of self-assertiveness, becoming a people pleaser. And then the far-ranged outcome is something called suffering. My marriage would suffer because of what we describe as codependence. I mean, this needs a lot of understanding those dynamics and attachments between me and my parents, because after marriage, a man shall leave. What about the woman? Shall forget. A man shall leave physically, and the woman needs, or the wife needs, to take care of her memory, shall forget. It's very important. So the other 7 youth factors during your teenage and young age: healthy or unhealthy gender ID. Do you understand well what's meant to be by being a man or a woman? This is very important. And that's one of the tasks that we all go through during our teenage, to end up knowing by gender. Spirituality and self-control is very important during teenage, because if we don't learn how to control ourselves during that age, it might be harder later on. Impact of guilt and shame on me. Addictive traits and the presence of any depression.